The galaxy watched in silence as the image filled every public broadcast, every space terminal screen, every habitable in 100 worlds, and even the hidden feeds that ran deep through the encrypted channels of governments and black market traders. It was a human man, tall, calm, dressed in the black formal suit of Earth's diplomatic corps, standing inside a transparent chamber on a raised platform. Chains wrapped around his wrists and ankles, glinting under the bright, white lights. The alien guards around him were tall and sharp-featured, their silver skin reflecting the glow, their insect-like eyes unblinking. Behind them, on a balcony high above, sat the ruling council of Varelia Prime, their long robes flowing, their faces cold as stone. In the chamber, the man's eyes stared straight ahead, past the guards, past the crowd, past the cameras, staring directly at whoever was watching as if he knew every single viewer was there with him. The council leader raised a thin arm and spoke in their clicking language. The words translated instantly into dozens of tongues, including English. Jonathan Hale, representative of the human world called Earth, you are found guilty of espionage, interference in sovereign matters, and crimes against the Varelian state. The sentence is death. By fire. Gasps erupted in many corners of the crowd, but not from the Varelians. They stood proud, even smug. A human diplomat executed. Live was more than a legal act. It was a message, one designed to travel far beyond this star system. The man in the chamber, Hale, didn't flinch. He didn't plead. He didn't move at all except for the smallest tightening of his jaw. Somewhere in the back of the chamber, a hiss began. An orange light flickered at the base, rose slowly, licking the walls of glass, climbing higher with every second. The crowd's murmur turned into silence, the kind of silence that seems to stretch into eternity. Hale kept his eyes forward, his breathing steady. The flames climbed to his knees, then his chest, their heat warping the air. And still he stared, until the fire wrapped around him entirely, and his shape was swallowed by a column of white-hot light. No scream came, no sign of pain, only stillness, until the light burned so bright the camera's auto-dimmed. Then black. The feed cut to static. In living rooms and bars across Earth, people stared at the empty screens. Children asked questions their parents could not answer. On news channels, experts argued in split-screen windows, calling it an unprecedented diplomatic murder and the single most dangerous moment in interstellar politics since humanity joined the Galactic Concord. Others called it the beginning of a war that Earth could not possibly win. In military command rooms, there was no shouting, only quiet, tight-voiced orders to increase fleet readiness and move assets to high alert. The death of one man in a glass chamber had just set billions of lives on a collision course. But behind the official responses, the truth moved faster than the headlines. Within minutes, encrypted messages passed between shadow agencies on both human and alien worlds. Files marked for command eyes only carried intercepted communications from Varelia. Messages that did not match their public statement. Intelligence officers saw lines about delivering the body and ensuring the flames are seen that made no sense if the execution was real. And then there was the strange energy reading picked up by a Terran probe orbiting near the Varelian moon, a sudden spike of unknown origin at the exact moment the chamber filled with light. On the streets of Earth's great cities, people gathered in front of giant screens, watching the moment loop again and again. Hale's calm face, the fire's rise, the unbroken stare. Social media turned his image into 1,000 posters, 1,000 slogans. Some called for peace, saying war would destroy everything. Others demanded revenge, not just on the Varelians, but on any alien who stood with them. In a bunker deep under Geneva, the United Earth Council met in emergency session. The president sat at the head of the table, eyes shadowed, hands clasped, so tightly the knuckles were white. Round her, military generals, intelligence directors, and foreign ministers spoke in quick, sharp voices. The options were all bad. Do nothing and appear weak, or strike and risk total galactic war. But then a technician rushed in, a thin man with fear in his eyes, holding a datapad. He placed it before the president without speaking. On the pad was a single audio file, tagged with coordinates far beyond Varelia space. It was faint, almost swallowed by static, but clear enough to send a shiver down every spine in the room. The voice was human. The voice was familiar. And the words it spoke made the air feel colder, not safe. Don't trust them. The fire was a lie. The president looked up slowly, meeting the eyes of every person in that room. Outside, the news still told the story of a man burned, alive. But here, in this bunker, a different story was beginning, one that meant the galaxy had just made the gravest mistake possible. It had underestimated Earth. The message from the dead man echoed in the minds of everyone who heard it, replaying like a ghost that refused to fade. Not safe. Don't trust them. The fire was a lie. In the bunker beneath Geneva, no one spoke for several seconds. After the audio ended, the silence heavier than any shouted argument could have been. The president's eyes narrowed as she studied the coordinates, tagged with the signal. They pointed to a dead zone on the galactic map, a region no official trade route passed through, a place most starship captains avoided without ever explaining why. Intelligence officers whispered about black site prisons, secret military outposts, and ancient wrecks drifting in the dark. But the real question that twisted in every mind was this. If Jonathan Hale was alive, then who or what had they watched burn to ash before billions of eyes?
Ow.
The United Earth Council split instantly into factions.
Ow.
The diplomats begged for restraint, warning that a single wrong move could bring the combined fleets of the Concorde crashing down on humanity before they had a chance to explain. The generals demanded immediate retaliation, citing the execution, real or staged, as a declaration of war. One man in a black uniform, Admiral Harris of the Terran Space Fleet, spoke only once. We cannot afford hesitation. Cross the line? They must be made to regret it. Outside, the streets of Earth cities churned with protests, vigils, and riots. In New York, a crowd of 50,000 gathered under the hollow billboards showing Hale's face, chanting for vengeance. In Los Angeles, an alien-owned consulate burned as police struggled to hold back furious civilians. Across the colonies of Mars and Titan, recruitment centers for the space fleet reported record numbers of volunteers, young men and women ready to fight for a man most had never met. But even as the public's rage grew, a strange unease spread. Among the people who truly understood galactic politics, the Varelians were dangerous, yes, but they were not reckless. Killing a diplomat was a move that broke the ancient Concord treaties, a move that would invite retaliation from multiple species, not just humans. It made no sense unless someone wanted the war. In a secure hangar on the edge of the lunar military district, a massive warship sat ready, black-armored, armed to the teeth, built for one purpose: destruction. Its name, painted in sharp white letters across the hull, was ECS Vengeance. Captain Rhea Morgan stood on the command bridge, a steel-eyed woman whose calm voice carried the weight of countless battles. She had been chosen to lead Project Iron Fist, a covert strike operation that would take the fight directly to Varelia Prime. Her orders were simple: locate, neutralize, and cripple their ability to ever threaten Earth again. But Rhea had her doubts. She had fought the Varelians before, had seen their tactics, their cold precision. This execution, it felt wrong. Like a play staged for an audience. Now there was this signal from the void, a voice claiming the fire was a lie. As the Vengeance prepared for departure, the tactical officer reported something unusual. A deep space probe in the outer rim had intercepted a distress beacon, only minutes old, matching human encryption patterns that had not been used in decades. The coordinates were nowhere near Varelia. They were in the opposite direction, past abandoned mining colonies and uncharted asteroid belts.
Oh.
Rhea stared at the screen, feeling a sharp pull in her gut. It wasn't her mission to investigate, but her instincts told her this was no coincidence. She gave the order to set a course for the beacon, her crew exchanging tense glances. The engines roared to life, the ship lifting from its cradle, sliding into the black void of space. For hours they traveled in near silence, the only sound. The hum of the reactors and the soft beeping of long-range sensors. Then, without warning, the beacon signal shifted, the faint voice became clearer. If you are human, turn back. The architects are watching. Trust no one. The name meant nothing to most of the crew, but it froze Ria's blood. She had heard it once before, whispered during an interrogation of a captured alien mercenary. The architects, a shadow empire said to manipulate entire civilizations from the dark. If the rumors were true, then Varelia was just a pawn. But before she could act, the sensors screamed an alert. Multiple contacts, closing fast, no identification. The blackness outside erupted with flashes of light as stealth ships emerged from the void, their designs unlike any known species, sharp, predatory shapes gliding toward the Vengeance without a sound. Ria ordered battle stations, the ship's guns coming alive. But the enemy didn't fire. They were boarding. As the first intruders breached the hull, the crew froze in shock. The armored figure stepping through the smoke were not alien armor, but a human military insignia. The smoke swirled in the dim corridors of the Vengeance as the intruder stepped forward, his boots clanging against the deck, his visor reflecting the cold glow of emergency lights. The Marines raised their rifles, but Captain Ria Morgan's voice cut through the tension like a blade. "Hold your fire." Something in the man's stance, steady, unafraid, told her this was not an enemy charging blindly into battle. He reached up slowly, removed his helmet, and the crew gasped. The face beneath was human, weathered, with streaks of gray in his hair and scars that spoke of years spent in places no human should survive. "Name yourself," Ria demanded, her voice low and dangerous. The man's reply was steady, almost calm. "Commander Elias Vorn, Terran Navy, missing in action." 10 years! His words fell heavy in the silence, a decade's worth of questions burning in the crew's minds. Vorn claimed he had been captured during a peace mission and taken beyond charted space to a place he called the Veil, where an ancient hidden power, the architects, operated in the shadows, controlling wars, toppling governments, and bending entire civilizations to their will. According to him, the Varelians were just tools. Their execution of Jonathan Hale, part of a larger game meant to set humanity and other Concord races against each other while the true enemy moved unseen. Ria wanted to believe him, but she had been in enough campaigns to know that spies came wrapped in familiar faces. "Prove it," she said, and Vorn did, pulling from his armor a small, damaged data core. He claimed it was stolen from the architects themselves, containing records of secret facilities, hidden fleets, and something else. Coordinates, too. A prison station orbiting a black hole where Jonathan Hale was alive. The crew erupted with questions, but before answers could come, the ship's alarms blared again. Enemy contacts inbound, this time unmistakably Varelian. Vorn's jaw tightened. "They're here for me. If they take me, you'll never find." Ria made her choice in a heartbeat. She ordered shields, 2 full weapons hot. The Vengeance surged forward into the black, the ship's guns thundering in the void. The battle lit the darkness in blinding flashes as alien and human technology clashed, the enemy's plasma bolts carving molten scars across the Vengeance's armor. Vorn stayed on the bridge, calling out enemy maneuvers with eerie precision, predicting their movements before they happened, his knowledge of their tactics too exact to be guesswork. Yet even as they fought, Ria could feel the weight of something larger pressing against her thoughts. The realization that this was no longer about revenge for one man's death. This was about survival in a war humanity didn't even know. It was fighting. When the last enemy ship broke apart and the stars went still, the crew exhaled in relief, but it didn't last. The distress beacon from Hale's location pulsed again, brighter, as if calling them closer. Ria turned to Vorn. "If this is a trap, you'd better pray I'm dead before it springs." Vorn only gave a thin, grim smile. "Captain, the trap was set a long time ago. We're already in it." The hum of the Vengeance's engines filled the silence on the bridge as Ria Morgan studied Commander Elias Vorn, her eyes searching for even the smallest crack in his calm. Trust was a fragile thing in deep space, and hers was already worn thin. The data core he carried sat on the command table, its surface scorched and pitted, its faint blue light pulsing like a heartbeat. Vorn's voice was steady as he explained. What he claimed was the truth, that the architects were not a species anyone could name, but a force hidden in plain sight, embedding themselves into the governments of dozens of worlds, using proxy wars and puppet leaders to shape the galaxy. For centuries, the Varelians, he said, had been given orders, not options, and the staged execution of Jonathan Hale had been designed to push Earth into a war that would bleed it dry. The crew listened in tense silence, some skeptical, others visibly shaken. Rhea wanted to dismiss him as a liar, but the coordinates inside the data core matched the distress signal they'd been chasing. And that meant one thing. If Vorn was telling the truth, Hale was alive. But before she could order the course change, the ship's tactical officer interrupted with a grim report. Earth's planetary defense network had just gone dark. No communication, no shield grid, no orbital fleet response. It was as if the entire defense system had been switched off with the flip of a single unseen switch. Rhea's mind raced. If the architects had agents inside Earth's own command structure, then the planet was already exposed to attack. The timing was too perfect to be coincidence. Vorn's expression darkened. They're moving faster than I thought. Once Hale is dead for real, there will be no one left who can testify against them. The thought that Hale carried proof, not just of his survival, but of who truly controlled the war, put a new weight on the mission. They had to reach him before the enemy did, but getting to the prison station would mean crossing hostile space swarming with Varelian patrols, and the black hole it orbited was notorious for swallowing ships whole. Rhea's crew was loyal, but even they knew the odds were near impossible. Still, her voice was calm when she gave the order. Plot. The course. Full speed. The engines flared, pushing the Vengeance into the void, the stars stretching into lines around them. Deep down, Rhea knew that if Vorn was right, this mission was no longer about revenge. It was about pulling back the curtain on a shadow empire that had been shaping history while humanity slept. And somewhere out there, in a place where time itself bent and twisted, Jonathan Hale was waiting, carrying secrets that could burn the architects' plans to ash, or doom Earth forever if they fell into the wrong hands. The Vengeance cut through the darkness like a blade, its engines roaring against the silence of space as it closed in on the coordinates. The black hole loomed ahead, a massive devouring shadow surrounded by a swirling halo of burning light. Its gravity so strong that even time itself bent under its pull. The prison station hung in that deadly orbit like a spider's web clinging to the edge of nothingness. Its long arms stretched outward, anchored by gravitic tethers that groaned. Against the pull of the abyss, Captain Rhea Morgan stood at the viewport, watching as distorted light twisted around the event horizon, the sight enough to make most people's stomachs turn. The crew moved with sharp precision, their voices tight, every one of them aware that hours spent here could mean days, even weeks passing back on Earth, where the enemy might already be advancing. Commander Vorn fed them stolen access codes, his hands moving quickly over the console, disabling automated defenses just long enough for the Vengeance to slip into docking range. The station's hull was scarred, its lights flickering, as if it too had been forgotten by the galaxy. A small boarding team, led by Rhea herself, pushed through the airlock and into the cold corridors beyond. The inside smelled of metal and ozone, the silence broken only by the creak of aging bulkheads. They moved through shadowed halls lined with sealed cells, each one holding prisoners from a dozen different worlds. But no sign of Hale. It wasn't until they reached the core chamber that they found him, strapped into a vertical restraint. Frame, his body thin and battered, but his eyes sharp and alive. When he saw Rhea, he didn't waste time on greetings. "You're late," he rasped, his voice hoarse. "They're already moving the fleet. The Architect's mothership has a shielded reactor core. Destroy it, and the rest will fall." The team freed him quickly, but the moment they turned to leave, the station shook violently. A Varelian fleet had arrived, blocking their escape. Rhea ordered the team to split, half escorting Hale back to the Vengeance, while the others laid charges to cover their retreat. The firefights in the narrow halls were brutal, plasma bolts flashing in the dark, alien roars echoing through the metal walls. Just as they reached the airlock, Bourne's voice came over, comes urgent and steady. "The fleet is closing in. If we don't jump now, we're dead." Rhea's mind worked fast, her eyes flicking to the swirling maw of the black hole. It was suicide to get closer unless they used it. "Plot a slingshot trajectory," she ordered. "We'll use the gravity well to break through." The ship pulled free just as the station collapsed into the abyss, the explosion stretching into strange slow-motion fire as it fell toward the event horizon. The Vengeance's hull groaned as the black hole's pull threatened to tear it apart, but the engines burned hot, flinging the ship outward with a burst of speed that ripped them free into open space. Alarms screamed they had emerged in the middle of a massive battle over Earth. The planet's defense fleet was in flames. Alien ships tearing through the skies, cities burning far below. Rhea gripped the edge of the command table, her eyes locked on the horizon where a dark, massive shape hung in orbit. The Architect's mothership. The Architect's mothership dominated the skies above, Earth like a dark wound in the stars. Its jagged hull the size of a city, bristling with weapons that spat fire into the chaos below. The Vengeance tore through the battlefield. Weaving between burning wrecks and collapsing defense platforms, its guns blazing against swarms of escort fighters. On the bridge, Captain Rhea Morgan's voice was steady but edged with steel as she barked orders, her eyes locked on the massive enemy vessel. Jonathan Hale stood beside her, leaning on the console for support, his face pale but his mind sharp. He fed targeting data into the ship's systems, marking the location of the hidden reactor core deep inside the mothership's shielded heart. Every second they delayed, more of Earth's cities fell under bombardment. The shields around the mothership flared like a wall of lightning, and the Vengeance's hull shuddered under the impact of return fire. "We can't punch through," the weapons officer shouted, but Hale's voice cut in, hoarse but certain. "We don't have to. Get me inside." Rhea made the call, a high-speed ramming insertion straight through a docking bay near the core.
Ow.
The Vengeance dove into the firestorm, its armor melting at the edges as enemy guns tracked them, but the crew held their course. At the last second, they breached the docking bay in an explosion of metal and flame, Marines flooding out into close-quarters combat. Plasma bolts lit the corridors as Rhea Hale and a small strike team fought their way toward the reactor chamber. Alien warriors roared and charged, but the humans moved with desperate precision, cutting them down room by room. Finally, they reached the core, a massive sphere of glowing energy suspended in magnetic fields, its hum vibrating through the bones. Hale limped forward, planting the compact warhead he had carried since his rescue. "Once this blows, their fleet will collapse," he said, glancing at Rhea, "and so will we if we're still here." They ran, alarms screaming, enemy forces pouring in from all sides. The warhead detonated just as the Vengeance pulled free, the explosion ripping the mothership apart in a sun-bright burst. A shockwave of fire and debris swept through orbit, tearing into the remaining enemy ships, their formations breaking, their weapons falling silent. Across the planet, surviving Varelian vessels signaled surrender, their commanders swearing they had been forced into the war under threat from the Architects. Earth's skies cleared slowly, the fires in orbit fading to drifting embers. On the bridge of the Vengeance, Rhea stood with Hale and Vorn, the three of them silent as the wreckage of the Architect's flagship spun into the void. The victory was real, but so was the knowledge that the enemy had not been destroyed, only wounded. Far from Earth, in the deep cold, beyond the mapped stars, a single escape pod drifted away from the battle, its black hull etched with the mark of the Architects. Inside, a shadowed figure activated a transmission, sending it into the dark with a single chilling message. "Earth has awakened. Prepare the others."